Welcome, Wendy.
Thank you.
It's so nice to see you. Welcome to CogX. Your first day here? Have you been?
I'll be honest with you, I tried to avoid it.
What have you?
Because my hip has just evolved into something horrible, and I called the people this morning to book the scans, and I'm probably going to have a hip replacement, and I'm in a lot of pain, and the O2 just shrieks walking.
Yes, it's not a small menu, is it? No.
So I actually tried really hard not to come this year, but then they invited me to be on your stage, and I love
wow,
you.
what a schmooze. No, that's lovely of you to say. It's lovely to see. I've got a few questions I've always wanted to ask you, actually, since we first met.
This was in Saudi Arabia.
It was just after the death of Her Majesty the Queen, I remember
it was
very well.
Like the day after, wasn't it? What?
Yeah.
No, not the day after, but very close. I remember talking about it and crying almost in my speech.
You did, yeah.
And I only had 5 minutes, and 30 seconds at least was on Her Majesty. And the thing was, it was Saudi, and it wasn't your first trip, was it?
Not mine, no.
But it was my first trip to Saudi, and I'd always said I would never go until the women there were allowed to drive, and they are now. And so I have had a lot of... Do you mind me telling these stories? I've had a lot of female PhD students from Saudi, and they're absolutely, if there's anybody in the audience, they're absolutely wonderful. Any woman in Saudi who's managed to get a scholarship to study outside Saudi has done a huge, must be fantastic. I love them to bits, and they kept saying, come, you'll love it, you won't believe what's happening and how it's opening up. So, and when I learned I didn't have to, wear special clothes to get off the plane and go in the opposite direction to all the men, I said, okay, I'm coming. They invited me to speak, and Oli was doing his emceeing job.
Well, this was, in their words, the Global AI Summit, of which we've got one of our own.
And it was wonderful, yeah.
Well, perceptions were certainly challenged, let's put it that way. I've got a question for you, more as a teacher, Wendy. And by the way, I'm going to go for another 6 minutes, and then we're going to open up to your questions. Okay, so relatively quick fire, if that's all right, Wendy. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Why do you do what you do?
I love it. I was driven to science from an early age. I actually wanted to be a surgeon. But my headmistress in 1969 said to me, Wendy, medicine is not a career for women. You will go to Cambridge and study mathematics. That's 1969. I came, a baby boomer. My parents, I was the first in the family to go to university. Yeah. My parents were in awe of the headmistress of the grammar school, supportive of me. I was very good at mathematics. And I think I hated her at the time. I rebelled. I went to read mathematics, but I refused to apply for Oxbridge. Just because I didn't think it was me, because my parents didn't have any money. It was that, so I totally understand this levelling up sort of... Anyway, so I applied to Southampton, and that has, been where my... And so retrospectively, I think she was right, because I was good at mathematics, and so I was able to excel, and then from maths I went into computing. If I'd gone into medicine, I would probably have done my training in those days, not got far with it, married, maybe had kids, and, I don't know. You never know, will you?
That's a sort of perspective now. Okay, next one.
I love computing. I've been passionate about trying to get women into computing and AI and everything.
Yeah, and kudos to you for all of those efforts. Now, governance and AI. Where are we globally, and where do we need to be?
We're in a mess. You have to read my book. Ez, I wanted... Her pavilion. Where are you, Ez?
Oh, fantastic.
I was trying to shout. I was on the balcony. I was listening.
Wendy just told me, yeah.
And I was on the judging panel, and she was stunning. And the pavilion was stunning. And you know what, Ez? There were two problems. COVID, right? Because nobody could go and see it. Well, the British government, but also we were too early for the AI hype wave. Nobody knew what AI was.
We were ahead of our time,
We
Wendy.
were way ahead of our time. And
maybe
it was
2
stunning.
years, 3 years.
It was stunning what she did.
Yeah.
And the AI...
It was quite moving, wasn't it?
Oh, I cried when I saw... Well, a bit. But when I... No, it was emotional. When you watch the words that were going up, that people put in to the poem. And then there was this amazing munging of AI, natural language processing in the background. In the end, we had to do it only in English, which was a bit of a shame. Now we'd probably be able to do it in multi-languages because the technology's moved on so much. But you were my hero at the time, Ez.
I found it moving to stand in front of a building that speaks. And it does come back to some of the... I think I'd love to hear what Wendy has got to say about the rooting of the models in the physicality, because I have a dream about a room that speaks.
Yeah, all sorts of things.
You know, that they're rooted in placeness. How can we keep it? With all the fear, how do we root it in place?
What I was going to say in the answer to Oli's question is, unfortunately, the agenda's been hijacked by the tech bros.
Say more what you mean.
Well, I mean, AI is amazing, and the technology, I mean, it's been around, AI, we all use AI all the time. It's not like suddenly, because of ChatGPT, people have got both horrified and excited by it.
Yeah.
And the big tech companies, remember, they're the people that want to make money out of this. So they may have all sorts of different, internal aspirations and want to do good, but actually in the end, they're beholden to their shareholders. They've got the leaders of the world mesmerized. So they've sort of moved out of the way the people who think about this stuff. People like me and the civil liberties people and the philosophers and the bigger thinkers about it. And, they're seeing Biden, they're seeing Rishi, they're seeing...
Massive summit in Washington yesterday.
Yeah, we got our little teeny one in Bletchley Park. No, I didn't say that. We've got Bletchley Park coming up. And, the India, they've been to see President Xi. I mean, Sam Altman did his tour around the world. There are no women in it at all. As far as I can see, you never see a woman's name mentioned as one of the people meeting Biden or Rishi or talking in Congress. Or that. It's not just gender diversity either. It's diversity of thought.
So give us an example, Wendy, of something that one of those big tech companies are doing, which is a bad thing.
Well, alienating 50% of the population, for a start.
Other than the representation, on their board.
And everybody else that has problems in terms of dealing with technology or thinking about the different cultural values, the geopolitics. And what I was going to say when I said was because you should all read the book Kieran O'Hara and I wrote called Four Internets. It was about the geopolitics of the internet, but it's the same thesis about AI, because the tech companies, it's basically an arms race between the US and China. And the tech companies are based on the West Coast in the US. They lobby Washington. What we do in Europe is interesting, but not the most important for them. They will do what they have to do to abide by European laws. But anyway, and of course, we don't know how to deal with China in this, because they're frenemies in the sense that they're developing the technology too. We want to work with them to govern, but they're also enemies in terms of how they spy on us, do they want to bring down the democratic process, all that sort of thing. And then there's Europe with none of the tech companies, and then the tech companies that are in China, and that's how it's playing out.
But and I know there are four internets and by the way, sorry, so carry on.
Well, the first one is the Silicon Valley, what we call the Silicon Valley Internet, the technical internet, TCP/IP, that was invented by Vint Cerf and Bob Kahn 50 years ago. Next year is holding. So we can still message people around the world with the same system. That hasn't broken down yet. If that breaks down, then all bets are off.
So very briefly, in my final promise, 30 seconds, I suspect when we think about the EU, we're talking about the European Union. Where does that put good old Great Britain in the mix?
Well, it's very interesting. It gets in the way, but it also lets us experiment differently. The EU went for their AI Act, statutory law. I mean, you need hours to talk about it, but and on a risk-based approach. And like GDPR, anyone who deals with the EU has to abide by their laws, and the fines for the big tech companies if they break them will be huge. But they did all that development before ChatGPT. And so it's already a bit out of date in that sense. We could talk more about that if you want. But then, of course, we came out with our white paper in March of this year, which was after ChatGPT, but the paper had been written before ChatGPT, which was a much more innovation led approach, and using existing agencies to govern AI, rather than setting up a new one. And we're now watching the rest of the world set up their agencies to govern AI, and it feels like we're on the back foot again.
Interesting, right.
And we're going to see what happens in November summit.
So we might touch on that, but look, we can talk about governance, regulation, we can talk about anything related, and of course your work at the university. Who would like to put a question to Dame Wendy? I'm looking, see you there, I'm looking for other offers just so we know where we're going to go with our team microphone. Do me a favour, would you go to the back first, and then I see you in that third row, we'll come straight to you afterwards. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I'm Mandeep Rai of the Values Campus. Wendy, thank you for being so outspoken, and thank you for saying things.
That's what you get with me, I'm afraid. That's why I'm not a CEO or a Prime Minister or anything.
We appreciate it. I was wondering, what are the values that are leading you? Because you've been outspoken for so long, and you're driven on a higher level. So, if you could answer that.
Well, the values that are driven me.
Drive you, yes.
Well, the thing is, of course, they're my Western values. I can't say anything different. That's how I was brought up, and it's really hard when people challenge that, because I recognise other values, and I think that's the key thing in our book. I recognise that when I've been to China a lot, for example, let's take China, the Middle East I'm also fascinated with. They have a different set of cultural values that has developed over thousands and thousands and thousands of years. You can't change those overnight. We can't. That's how I was brought up. I was brought up in the Christian faith. So I suppose I was brought up, to Ten Commandments and all those. Those are the sorts of values. I still, when they say, "Are you religious?" I'm not a believer, but I think I was brought up with those values. So, but also, somehow I've developed the ability to be confident about speaking out when I see injustice or I see things happening that are, I think, taking things in a really bad direction. And because I'm not paid by government, I'm not paid by the tech companies. I've always wanted the freedom to be in academia. So I can say things.
I think our guest were you wanting to come back in? I didn't know if your mic was up.
I just wanted to say you don't need to be apologetic of the Western values, but I wanted to know what top 3 values. Is that integrity, free speech? I'm just implying from what
Well, you see, the free speech thing, integrity, yes. But you see that challenged all the time. I could give you examples on that one. But the free speech one, it's really difficult to police content on the internet if you allow for free speech. Right? It's actually, if you don't mind losing freedom of speech, China's a much safer place to be on the internet. But would any of us, agree to live in that sort of cultural environment where everything everything we say is being monitored by the government? We protect ourselves. We protect. I mean, India have just passed their Supreme Court, not just, but they passed a law that says privacy is a human right. I don't think, if there's any lawyers in the audience, I don't think we have that in the UK. But, the protecting freedom of speech makes it so hard. I was to do the safety online thing. I was watching the House of Lords debate. I mean, as if I've got nothing else to do, but it was on at Parliament yesterday, live. Not House of Lords, House of Commons the final debate on the online safety bill.
Safety bill, yeah.
And it's so difficult. I mean, one of my favourite people is Tim Clement-Jones, the Lord who did the House of Lords report on AI. And it's he said it's one of the hardest things he's ever had to debate. Do you allow, under some circumstances, government to look at encrypted messages?
Isn't it a slight, I know it's obvious observation, a slightly weird clash between these sort of centuries-old, snail-like institutions meeting this vastly fast-moving sort of tsunami? It's very odd as a clash, isn't it?
Well, you see, I think that the speed adjusts to... So I'm sure they said the same when other technologies came along. Someone was talking on the radio about when trains first appeared, and was it everyone? They thought. They thought people's heads were going to fall off if they went over a certain speed. And also,
Mustafa Suleyman said yesterday, as they were welcoming them in, some of them got struck by the train.
That was him. It was him. His book. Yeah, he was on Radio 4 yesterday
Coming
morning.
Wave.
Have you got him here? No.
Yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday.
Your
Was he
warm-up.
here? Okay. So I can't wait to read the book. He said exactly that on the Radio 4 yesterday. All the new technology. I mean, think about electricity. Think about but how it kills. We've learned. But I think that we feel like it's going very fast. but actually my point is, it's not going as fast as we think it is.
Right, now please hold that thought. Let's get that second question in. It was the first one to be offered. Here we are, and I'm looking around the blue room here. I see you there. Great, please. And why not go next door afterwards? There you go.
Yeah, Mani Janakiraman, I work for London Stock Exchange Group. My question is around, from the first one you spoke about liberal democracy. So we value it in this regions.
In our world,
AI is for everyone, right? So AI is being developed everywhere. It's going at a breakneck speed. How do we marry the cultures that we have in these geographies to regulating AI?
Well, I think you got to the nub of the question, because that's what we have to do. What did you say? AI is for everyone. I wish it was. I don't think it is at the moment. Like computers, I mean, they're not designed by everyone. They're designed by a small subset of society. And the same goes for most of the technological systems that we use. But yes, we want AI to be for the good of humanity. That's a slick phrase. Google used to say, do no harm. They took that off their website because they found it was very difficult to do no harm and to guarantee you're going to do no harm. And that's going to be true of AI. But your question about cultural values, this is so important because I believe, and I don't know. I don't know whether China's been invited. I don't know anything
Should they be invited?
Yes, I believe China should be invited.
At a corporation level or a government level?
Corporation level's harder. I don't know.
Is it? Some would say easier.
Would you?
Some would say.
Because they're competitors in that sense. I don't know about that. Okay. I'd want to talk to the tech companies about that. I'm not all anti-tech company, by the way. I think they're amazing. I just think they need to, governments, and it isn't just about governments, we need to help the government. They have a very much more diverse opinion makers at these summits, at these talks. But I do think China has to be at the table, just like it has to be at the table, anything to do with energy or climate change or, nuclear bombs or whatever you're talking about. Wasn't that amazing? Putin and Kim Jong-un. It's like a movie with this train going so slowly. Anyway, it's like that's another whole issue. But I think China has to be at the table, but we have to accept that what we can agree with, they are actually, I believe, and I was reading something on, I don't know, was it Politico or on in the M words, the news blog. No, Medium, I think I'm trying to say. There was an article I read last night while I'm sitting in a taxi trying to get back from this place about how China's actually further ahead than us on AI regulation within China, because it's easier for them to do it, because they don't have to worry about it. They already can look at everything, right? So they can pass laws we can't begin to pass. And I'm not saying that's good, but I'm saying we need to share those ideas. And I would say India is absolutely crucial in this. Absolutely crucial. I can talk more about that if you want. But
just in a nutshell, just explain why India is so significant there. 1 billion people, the world's biggest democracy.
Yeah, huge. And they have done amazing stuff around their digital ID, the Aadhaar. They've got the internet and mobile internet banking to everybody in India, whether they can read, write, have
a systems upgrade, really, isn't it?
It's unbelievable. And around that, they've developed their digital public infrastructure, what's now called the Indian Stack. And there are so many lessons for us to learn in that. And to the civil liberties point, all of that stuff, as I learnt last February, was developed by volunteers. Many who work for the tech companies, but they volunteered to belong to a group called iSpirit, who have developed all these ideas. And then through well-chosen influencers like the founders of Infosys, who have a lot of money, they've influenced the government, and they've got it to the whole country.
Interesting. This is a cool case study. Thank you. Now we're going to change gears slightly with thank you for a pithy question next door to the previous questioner, if that's all right. And in advance for a pithy answer, Wendy, just so we can get 3 more questions in, please.
Hello, Derek Alton with Apolitical. And one of the things we're working on is developing training for government. And so that's sort of my question for you is, what do you think government needs to know about AI to be a very important player in this space?
Brilliant. Apolitical, doing great work. Your colleague Robin Scott up on the main stage just this morning. Thank you.
They need people who are, not everybody, it needs to be able to program and do machine learning programming, right? But they need to know what it is and how it works at a very high level. They need to understand the consequences of what this technology can and can't do. And I would say again, it's not the generative AI. Everyone's going, oh my God, we've only got 2 years to save the world or whatever it is. Actually, it's not a mature technology. Mm-hmm. And I'm forecasting a dot-com crash again. I don't know what they'll call it, an AI crash, because there's all this money going into something that isn't yet a proven, reliable technology. And how you replicate it with all that. Was it Ez said about the number of the time it takes to search the internet, and you're pouring misinformation into it. It's being trained on biased misinformation, all that sort of stuff. What did you ask me?
No, but it's
what did you ask me? Oh yeah, the government needs to understand all that. Right? They need to understand that you can't just. The tech companies will say it's wonderful. We can do whatever you want. You regulate us. Regulate us the way we want to be regulated.
It's a good point, though, isn't it? Because not to be cynical, but if we rely on businesses to educate government, perhaps they're not the only educator available.
No, and it needs a diversity of approach to this. Look at the hands going up. Sorry.
Yeah, and I did promise one over here, if that's all right.
Oh,
and I
yes,
see
my
you
friend over there, my friend here.
Yeah, here we go.
Hello. Hello, Wendy. I've got so many questions, but I think I'll go for this one. I think, I don't know whether you had a chance to see Stephen Fry's presentation this morning.
Well, no, I was here, and then he didn't come here. So.
Right. Well, he did. I mean, apart from the fact that I'm fascinated with the ideas, who is as use, in that they're worried about the sort of awareness that the AI is bringing to us, a sort of new consciousness. And of course, Prometheus, who in fact is giving us that consciousness through AI. So are you a Zeus or a Prometheus? The question beyond that is, we need strong voices. We need leaders who are prepared to take on the different questions. I know you're a strong voice. Who are the other women who are good, strong voices?
That lady there, Maria, who I called Megan earlier. If Megan's in the audience. Hello. People like her. Tabitha, Sana Karigani. There's loads. I could go on forever. Name some more. I mean. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there are tons, right? But our voices don't get heard as ever. So unfortunately, we have to shout quite loud. And I'm often a bit over-controversial because then I get heard. The other thing I do, and I don't know if you've seen me on the radio and TV lately, I get on because I can explain AI, and I'm not always. Sometimes the professors of AI around me say, "But that's not right, Wendy." But I don't really mind too much about the detail. I can explain AI in a way that people can understand.
And I'm keen to get a couple more questions, but just joining dots. Megan Smith joins us. She would be Dame Megan Smith if she lived here. Former CTO of the United States, now Chief Executive Shift 7. Nice to see you, Megan. Why don't we take a quick question from Maria here, and let me see the other hands just so we understand. I'll take a pair of them if that's all right, and just here as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy, for your exceptional leadership in building the AI.
I think my answer is Zeus, by the way. But anyway.
And also very grateful for your support for women in the AI community and beyond to find their own voice, including myself. Very, very grateful for that. I wanted to ask you a question about the growing AI report you've been co-authored in 2017, commissioned by Theresa May, which had 18 recommendations for public policy in UK. Are we on the right path?
We've lost it.
And how can we get back on the right path?
So I want you to give that both barrels, excuse the phrase. Essa, I'd like your question as well, please.
We were on a good path.
No, forgive me, Wendy, just hold the thought, because I want to hear I will help you hold the questions.
Dame Wendy, thank you very much for this brilliant talk. Firstly, on the point of women in AI, half my advisory board is women, half my speaking panels are all women, so I fully believe and get back everything you're saying.
Yeah, sure, but you tell Rishi Sunak that. I don't have anything against him, but he doesn't have a woman in the room when he talks about AI.
I couldn't agree more with you.
He had appointed an advisory panel, and there are no women.
No, it's one.
Right, okay. Carry on, Essa.
My question is regarding the education system. We're both passionate about skills, and what can the education system do to prepare and embrace them for the wave
Well,
of AI?
this is another thing the government need to lead on, for sure.
Now, forgive me, but what we'll do is we'll split, sorry for not having any more time for questions, we'll split our remaining time as you wish between those two questions.
Well,
one on the review
I
and
want
one
to
on
try and make
education.
them the same thing in a way, because we had a path. I'm not saying it was necessarily the correct path, but it was a good path we were on. We were third in the, I hate league tables, but if they're there, you have to, be part of them, unfortunately. It's US, China, and it was us. We've now dropped Singapore, who followed our playbook totally, because not because I was on their advisory boards. I know they did because I was on their advisory board. They've overtaken us, because they're taking a diverse approach to AI. What this government is doing that I think is wrong is that they talk nothing about skills. This government isn't talking anything about adoption of AI by non-tech companies. I mean, that's such a difficult thing for a company that is not a technology. Well, even the technology companies don't use it that well themselves. They use it in the stuff they put to us. But the retail companies and the any company you can think of, farming and any non-tech company trying to use AI, it's so difficult. They need education. They need help. We were doing all that. The Office for AI, which was set up, and the AI Council were moving in that direction, but we were accused of not being fast enough, not picking up on Gen AI. We've also had the problem with the Turing Institute as well, being criticised for that. We were, but it's all been, everyone's been bedazzled by the money and the big tech, and it all happened. It turned on the release, very clever of OpenAI to release ChatGPT, because people now use that as an alternative term for AI. It's like Hoover and vacuum cleaners. Everyone talks about ChatGPT as being AI, and it's not the be-all and end-all. And also, I'm not against Sam Altman, but he did that fantastic tour of all the governments, talking about what regulation should be, and getting them scared. And this sort of scaremongering, which the government have fanned. And of course there are cybersecurity issues. Of course there are. We need to think about all that in the mix, but there needs to be a good, diverse mix. And I think at the moment I know there is no independent advisory board to government at the moment. That's gone. Right? The AI Council's gone.
And how would you change the education system? Where would you start?
Well, I'm an advisor to the Department for Education. I advise almost every department but I'm on their board for this, and I think that we need a campaign, a policy where the government says we need to get AI skills for everybody. It's not all about government money. It's about putting together all sorts of sources and saying this is a priority. This is what we have to do to get everybody, because we have the issue, the threat of job losses. I personally think there'll be more, as usual with technology revolution, technology developments, more jobs will be created down the line, but there will be losers in the short term. People are very worried. The taxi drivers
we're sort of weirdly, aren't we weirdly far behind on this? Because for example, we have a maths curriculum that exists, almost imagining that computation doesn't exist.
Well, we did. Michael Gove, for all his sins, he did introduce computer science into the curriculum properly, and then we didn't train enough teachers. That wasn't his fault, particularly, but we then had British Computer Science been very heavily involved in this, and we have to train the teachers to be able to teach computer science. And of course, the teachers say, I can't take any more changes, But we need to think about how we're talking about AI in the classroom, so we need to provide the training for teachers to feed it into all the courses and computer science courses. We need the universities to make sure that the students, whether you're on a computer science course, you can do an AI module, of course, but if you're on a history course, how do you learn about AI, right? So my passion, and I haven't got Southampton to agree to this yet, is that every student who leaves Southampton University will have attended an AI module in their discipline.
Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah, wouldn't it be cool? Just tell my Vice-Chancellor that. He's all right. No, our Vice-Chancellor supports it, but it's, how long it takes to change education in universities.
Well, what I'd sort of like to do is sort of, pour us each a sort of coffee and carry on for another hour and a half. But alas...
You did with Ez got an hour.
Well...
Where is she? She's gone now.
Extra
Anyway,
special
we
reasons.
have minus 9 seconds.
No, we do. But we have sadly been beaten by the clock. But I want to say two things. And they both involve the phrase thank you. Thank you, Dame Wendy Hall, for being here today. But crucially, thank you for the work that you've done in the world and that you continue to do in the world, and for just keeping on doing that work. It's hugely appreciated by people here and far beyond. Thank you.
Thank you for my supporters too. You're lovely.